With the problems continuing to persist in a relationship, the challenge is a good man will keep trying. He'll keep trying to have the conversations. He'll keep trying to help his wife see where he's coming from and trying to get her on board to solve the issues in the relationship. He'll keep doing the things his wife says he needs to do to solve the issues, but nothing ever gets solved. And a good man will keep doing this until they give up and succumb to the crazy making and just say, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm not bringing it up anymore. But until we look at ourselves as women and wives, the issues will persist. They will never go away. Hello, I'm Karen Seitz, and this is the Happy Wife School. This podcast is for married women to realize that we are responsible for our happiness, that no one and no thing can make us happy, and that our husbands are not the source of our unhappiness. In each episode, I red pill married women to know that we are the problem in our marriages to good men. For the good men, this podcast will wake you up to the realities of your wife's woman ways, to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to her emasculation in a constructive, caring way. Before we dive into today's episode, a couple reminders. My message is meant for common and usual marital issues. My podcast is not intended for abusive, violent, or compulsive behaviors in a marriage that are threatening or dangerous. Also, please take a second to visit my website and learn more about my courses, which offer solutions for married women and good men. You can find the link in the description below. With all that being said, let's get started. Let's get started on why good men are made to feel wrong in their marriages. The angle I'm taking with this today and why good men are made to feel wrong in their marriages is looking at why, when as a good man, you bring up issues and problems in the marriage, you're trying to work with your wife to solve the problems and issues so that you can have a good, happy marriage, understanding why you're made to feel wrong in that and why the issues in the marriage never, ever get solved. The reason I want to talk about this today at a very humbling moment this week at work with my boss and mentor, David, that I'm working on a project and I didn't do something correctly. And he brought it up to get resolved. And oh my goodness, my woman way of feeling wrong in myself, my back going up, my walls going up, and getting defensive and being completely sure of my side of how I perceived it and what I thought was right, went sky high. And David being my mentor and helping me to grow as a woman, to grow just in myself as a person, to be the best I can be. That's why I do what I do. Had to help me see this woman way that's still in me, which then sparked the topic for today. So that's the kind of culture that I work in, that these issues get brought up and worked out in real time. And then we were like, oh, this is the perfect topic for the live show on Saturday. So that's what inspired me to talk about this today. And so this can also be, I know a lot of men work in a corporate setting and might experience these very same things with your female coworkers, or also for the women listening, seeing this in yourself and how you show up in your marriage, or how you might show up with your coworkers or your boss in a work setting. That's not the angle we're taking, but just so you can broaden it a little bit and see where it applies there as well. So the issues never get solved. A good man brings up issues and problems with his wife to look at in a constructive way, not attacking her, not trying to make her wrong, but actually trying to work towards a healthy, loving, happy marriage. So you can try to talk things out, try to have a conversation, go to counseling, read books, and yet the same problems keep coming up. So as we talk about this episode is for good men to understand why the problems never get solved, or even when you think you've had a good conversation with your wife and the issue's going to get solved, it just persists and keeps happening, is to understand what is really happening so you can break out of the crazy making, believing you are the problem and it must be something you're not doing right or that you've done wrong. This episode is also a red pill moment for us as women to see in a constructive way how we are the problem in a marriage to a good man, with the issues and problems never getting solved. So for the ladies listening, please have an open mind and don't put your walls up to this. This isn't meant to make you wrong or bad. And it's to help us look at ourselves to see the limitations and shortcomings we have so we can actually work on them and heal from them, because we cannot heal that which we deny. So part of this being the red pill for women is to see these issues in our woman ways so we can change. Because if we don't see them, or we continue to live in the story of it's not us, it's our husbands or another person in our lives, this is going to apply in so many different relationships. We can't ever move forward. And the more we live in this pattern, the worse we feel about ourselves, and more we actually perpetuate the issues and problems in the marriage and in other relationships. So be humble. I had to be humble on Thursday when this came up at work, and having to look at myself in a deeper way in this issue and seeing, oh my gosh, this is still there. And it was a humbling moment, but for a good thing, because now I can keep working on this in myself and continue growing and evolving and getting better. Without a willingness to look at ourselves, the issues never ever get solved. So with the problems continuing to persist in a relationship, the challenge is a good man will keep trying. He'll keep trying to have the conversations. He'll keep trying to help his wife see where he's coming from and trying to get her on board to solve the issues in the relationship. He'll keep doing the things his wife says he needs to do to solve the issues, but nothing ever gets solved. And a good man will keep doing this until they give up and succumb to the crazy making and just say, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm not bringing it up anymore. But until we look at ourselves as women and wives, the issues will persist. They will never go away. And here's why. Here's the fundamental issue and dynamic going on underneath. And then why a good man always feels wrong is that a good man will bring up a problem in the marriage, say something like the budget or sex, because he's a problem solver. That's the nature of a good man. He wants to put the issues on the table, address them as they come up, because again, he wants to find a solution and make the marriage good and make the marriage work and make it healthy and happy. As women, we are pain avoiders, especially in having to look at ourselves and where we need to step up and where we need to address our own limitations and shortcomings and the behaviors we are bringing into the marriage that are contributing to the issues and problems, such as a budget and sex, which are two of the biggest issues in a marriage. So our husband brings it up. Hey, we need to talk about the budget and your spending, or hey, can we please talk about sex and how we find a solution that works for both of us, because it's not working. So our husbands bring those issues up, or any number of issues, but those are two, like I said, really common ones. And as women, we automatically feel wrong. We automatically feel wrong that we have done something wrong, or even deeper, that we are wrong, and our defenses go up. And we go into attack mode as women and see our husbands and the issues they are confronting us with through the lens, our own internal lens of, I am wrong. And internally, as a woman in that experience, this is what I experienced on Thursday that created the catalyst for this topic. Internally, as a woman in that experience, our husbands bring an issue up. We go into attack mode feeling we are wrong. That internal experience is almost like a short circuit for us. And it's a crazy making within us. And all we can see is through that lens of we've been made to feel wrong. In that short circuit and internal experience and our own internal crazy making, we then go into projection mode of he's gaslighting me. That's not what's happening. This is what's happening. And this is why he's the problem and what he needs to do for this to get fixed. And we go into that defense, into the conversation, projecting our own internal chaos and feeling wrong in ourselves, project that onto our husbands, that they are wrong. They're not seeing things correctly. This is what needs to happen for this problem to be solved. Or that's not even a problem. Why are you making it a problem? And we are so convincing in that projection and in the gaslighting of our husbands, in that crazy making, that a good man who's been worn down, emasculated, made to feel wrong and bad in the relationship, then doubts himself, believes his wife's side, then she must be right, I must be wrong, and I must be the problem. That's our own fundamental issue of feeling wrong in ourselves as women, is why we make our husbands as good men so wrong in the marriage. And they internalize that, the men internalize that, believing that they are wrong. And so the cycle starts all over. And the issues persist and they never get solved in the relationship. So the fundamental issue in a good man being made to feel wrong in the marriage, and the fundamental issue in the problems never getting resolved in the relationship, is how wrong we feel in ourselves as women, which stick around, because in the solution, I will talk about why why do we feel so wrong? And why do we get so defensive when an issue gets brought up? Because a good man doesn't understand that. In general, a good man, a problem gets solved. Okay, yeah, let's look at it. He's not going into, oh my gosh, I'm so wrong. That's our experience as women. And that's the fundamental issue of feeling wrong in ourselves, that our husbands can't sit down with us to have a reasonable conversation to solve the problem, because we take everything as a threat. We take everything as a personal attack, which then spins us into an internal emotional chaos within ourselves, that then we project that experience onto our husbands, making them wrong. It destroys any constructive conversation in a marriage. It makes it impossible. Our nature of feeling wrong as women within ourselves, when our husbands bring something up and immediately take it as a personal attack and a threat on our very existence of who we are, that's how deep it goes. It makes it impossible to have any kind of reasonable, constructive conversation to solve the issues. And in that, we turn our husbands into the villain, that they're attacking us and making us wrong, when they're genuinely trying to bring up the issues and solve them to make a happy, good marriage. Good men over time succumb to this projection and believe they are the villain and they are wrong. That's why when I ask a good man, how do you know yourself as a good man? He has such a hard time, for the most part, generally speaking, has such a hard time answering that, because he's been broken down so much in the marriage to be made the villain and to be made to feel wrong, and succumbing to that and believing it must be true. That's the power, the destructive, toxic power we have over men as women. We have to see that. That's the red pill, to see the truth of that in ourselves, to change it. The fundamental issue within ourselves is creating a miserable experience of who we are and how we feel internally, the relationship we have with ourselves, and prevents us from being happy and having a happy, loving marriage. We have to see as women that we are the villains. As women, we have to see we are the villains in a relationship with a good man. That projecting our own internal experience of feeling wrong in ourselves onto our husbands and gaslighting them that they are wrong is how we're the antagonist and the aggressor in our own marriages. Can't even see it, because we are locked into seeing the relationship and the problems through that lens of, no, they're wrong and they're the problem. Where I'd like to take this now is 5 toxic behaviors we have as women when we are made to feel wrong. I'm specifically talking about this in marriage, but a number of these, not all of them, but a number of them applied to many relationships. But what happens when our husband brings up an issue, we immediately feel attacked and wrong, and then react in these 5 toxic behaviors. And the ultimate issue of why we can't look at a problem our husband brings to the table and wants resolved, and along with feeling wrong, is we don't want to take accountability for our shortcomings and change, because then we'd have to see where we are wrong. Meaning we've made a mistake, or we have a shortcoming, or we have an unhealthy behavior pattern that's persistent in the relationship and breaking the marriage down and breaking our husbands down. We react in these 5 toxic behaviors to protect ourselves against being exposed. So we never have to look at ourselves and take accountability to change. It's a protective mechanism. And the 5 toxic behaviors are our arsenal to barricade ourselves off and never have to admit where we are wrong and where we do need to improve, and actually follow through to do that. The first toxic behavior is the wall. The first toxic behavior we have as women when we are made to feel wrong is the wall. All women have a wall. And we know we have a wall. It's something that we have built brick by brick from the very, very first time that we ever got hurt. Whether that be our first breakup, whether that be interactions or experiences with our mothers or sisters or brothers or fathers, friends. We begin to build our wall brick by brick. It is a defense mechanism to not allow others into our heart and who we are, to protect ourselves from being hurt. Again, it's another symptom of how we are fundamentally pain avoiders and don't want to experience hurt or conflict or adversity in life. We perceive any challenge, any normal life experience, even if it's difficult, or problems in a relationship, as hurt against us. Our wall is built brick by brick based on the hurts that we have accumulated in our life. And our husbands are constantly up against that wall that we have built. The wall doesn't happen to us. It is something we build, again, brick by brick, from the hurts in our life. And our husband's dealing with a massive wall that we've been building since we were young, that he is constantly up against. Our first response when our husband brings up something that needs to be worked on in the relationship is feeling hurt. That, oh, I'm wrong and bad and I can't do anything right. So our wall, when our husband brings something up that needs to be looked at or needs to be solved in the relationship, the wall amplifies. And good men feel this. They can feel the wall through the relationship because our wall is always up. It's just a matter of how high and how thick we have it protruding out. But a good man absolutely feels it when he brings up an issue he wants to solve in the marriage. It's why, for the good men listening, why you can feel very intimidated, scared, and very anxious in bringing up a problem in the marriage, because you know you're stepping into the lion's den and you know you're going to feel that wall. And our walls are very, very hurtful. Again, they're built on hurt within ourselves. and our walls operating in a relationship, especially in our marriages with our husbands, that operation of the wall is to hurt back, to inflict hurt back as retaliation of the hurt we feel within ourselves. And as a good man, you feel that wall amplify when you bring an issue up. And then as women, we filter everything through that wall and our perception of being made to feel wrong and being hurt, and nothing gets resolved. Over time, and having to face our wall again and again and feel our wall and being pushed away in the relationship, over time, a good man gives up because the wall has gotten so thick, he can't find his wife anymore. The woman he married and thought he married is gone, barricaded by her own wall. The second toxic behavior we have as women when we are made to feel wrong is gaslighting. With gaslighting, we make our husbands feel wrong at the very essence of who they know themselves as. It's a psychological manipulation that causes him to feel wrong and flawed and creates a deep experience of doubt in his own reality. And that's why, again, for the good men listening, you might find yourself throwing in the towel in a conversation, trying to resolve an issue because of the gaslighting and your wife's defense mechanism when you bring an issue up. And she feels wrong, so then she gaslights you to feel wrong. And then you doubt that what you're bringing up is even right, or maybe you're completely off base. And it's something you have to do, not something she has to do, which is what she's convincing you of in the gaslighting. I recently did an episode called Gaslighting Inside the Mind of Your Wife, and I would watch that for more in-depth information on the gaslighting. But when you bring something up to solve a problem, your wife gaslights you, and as women listening, we gaslight our husbands to doubt the reality of the issue that you brought up to get solved. So then nothing ever gets solved because we make you wrong and we don't want anything to be solved. We want to perpetuate our victim story that you are the problem and have the problems exist because it's what we can point our finger out to as why we are so unhappy and so miserable. The third toxic behavior we have as women when we are made to feel wrong is withholding sex. We weaponize sex when we feel attacked and personally hurt by the issues being brought up. And we retaliate by taking sex away because we know it's the most important thing to our husbands in the marriage. And this one is a double-edged sword because one of the most common issues that men bring up is, how do I talk about sex with my wife and have her re-engage with sex? Because of these toxic behaviors and our defense mechanisms, good men can't. When they do, as women, we retaliate further by digging in further, becoming more stubborn around sex. So why there are no constructive conversations about sex in the marriage. We withhold to retaliate. We're already withholding anyhow when we're disengaged from sex, and then there's no solution. And then men buy into the gaslighting of all the excuses we have for why we are disengaged with sex. And it's really just another toxic tool in our arsenal to make men feel wrong and like they're the problem and to have the power and control in the relationship. The fourth toxic behavior that we have as women when we are made to feel wrong, we never apologize. The reason we never apologize when we are reactive and hurtful is we would have to admit we are wrong. If we ever do apologize, it's to get past the discomfort we feel in the conflict, but then we never follow through to change, because a true apology requires change of the behavior. But we never follow through to change because we don't mean our apologies if we do apologize, because we'd have to admit that we are wrong. Internally, we are convinced that we are right. We convince ourselves that we are right because we can't admit that we're wrong. And that entrenches us in camp victim, not wanting to look at ourselves and not have to admit where we are wrong. The fifth toxic behavior we have as women when we are made to feel wrong is crazy making. Crazy making is when a man gets trapped in the emotional turmoil of his wife's experience of being wrong in herself. A man in the crazy making feels a sense of complete destruction of their own reality and literally makes a good man feel like he is going crazy, that nothing he knows to be true or right is real. It's why so many men comment to me or on the videos, "Thank you so much for helping me to know I'm not crazy and helping me regain my sense of sanity." Because they've been made to feel crazy in the marriage or relationship. All of the behaviors that I have shared, the wall, gaslighting, withholding sex, never apologizing, are the arsenal of which, as women, we create the crazy making in a marriage or relationship. It's the lens of which we respond and react to our husbands, is our own internal feelings of chaos and our own feeling of being made to be crazy within us, unable to see that we're the ones creating the crazy in the relationship. Because again, we can't look at ourselves because then we'd have to see we are wrong. So these are the 5 toxic behaviors that we have as women when we are made to feel wrong, specifically in a marriage: the wall, gaslighting, withholding sex, never apologizing, and crazy making. So what's the solution? What's the solution to a woman feeling fundamentally wrong and then constantly in that projecting onto her husband that he is wrong, and a good man always feeling wrong in the marriage or relationship? So I'm going to talk to the women first. The why first. Why do we feel so wrong as women? It might be difficult for us to understand in ourselves. It is certainly very difficult for a good man to comprehend because he doesn't have this wiring in himself. Why do we feel so wrong? And why is our first reaction and response when an issue is brought up that we're wrong? The feeling of being wrong in us as women is created in camp victim. As women, we are very, very entrenched in what I talk about in camp victim, putting the power and control of our experience of ourselves and our lives outside of us onto other people, circumstances, our past. Definitely our husbands. We blame them for the issues and problems in the marriage. But we live in camp victim, externalizing our whole experience of ourselves and our lives to where we have no power and control within ourselves to change. And we have no ability living in camp victim. We have no ability to look at ourselves and see our own issues and problems and how we are creating them and then take the steps to change. Living in camp victim renders us powerless, and there is no self in camp victim. We have externalized our experience of self. So there's in that no one to look to within ourselves as why the problems persist and why we have the experience we have. What happens in that when we live in camp victim, blaming our husbands, blaming our upbringing, blaming our past, blaming our parents, blaming anything and everything we can think of for our experience. The problem in that is we still see ourselves make the same mistakes, have the same unhealthy behavior patterns, make the same unhealthy choices over and over and over again, which leads us to beat ourselves up of why we can't change, why we have the same insecurities, why we have the same patterns, why we make the same choices that make us feel so miserable. We see ourselves doing that. But there's no change, which is why we beat ourselves up, which internally, in beating ourselves up, is the pattern and behavior that makes us feel so wrong in ourselves. Let me be very clear. It is not your upbringing. It's not your parents. It's not your husband. It's not your ex-husband. It's not your ex-boyfriends. It's not the patriarchy. It's not society. It's not magazines and social media and models and the expectations put on us of how we're supposed to look as women. Whatever it is in your victim story, it is not those things that make you feel wrong in yourself. I used to think it was all those things too. It's not. And there's no solution if we believe it's those things that make us feel so wrong in ourselves as women. You will be trapped forever. It only gets worse. Your insecurities only persist and get worse if you live in camp victim thinking it's something or someone else that's made you feel so wrong. No, it's the living in camp victim blaming others, which renders us completely powerless to change. And the difficult part is we cloud our awareness and cloud our perception when we live in camp victim, so we can't see any of this. That's why I'm here and trying to help women see this. Because if it's not held up in front of you, you'll never see it and you'll be trapped in this miserable experience the rest of your life. I would have been trapped in this miserable experience the rest of my life if my mentor hadn't held up the mirror and helped me see these things within myself. When you live in camp victim thinking it's everyone else and you watch yourself do the same things over and over and over and over and over again, we beat ourselves up, which makes us feel wrong. That's it. That's the root cause. There's no other reason. Even the men listening, it's not your wife's upbringing. It's not her parents. It's not her trauma. It's that we are stuck in being victims, and in that beat ourselves up mercilessly for our problems and patterns and choices, which makes us feel wrong, depletes us of any sense of value in ourselves, depletes us of any confidence, any secureness in who we are, that we are feel fundamentally wrong within ourselves, then can't see that and project that onto our husbands and others in our lives. It's us. We're the problem. When you can see that and understand that and accept that in yourself, that you are the problem and it's not your parents, it's not your upbringing, it's not your past, it's not your circumstances, it's not your husband, it's you. It is incredibly empowering because now you can change. You can break out of the shackles of beating yourself up, of emotionally beating your husband up or others in your life. Take constructive steps forward to change. Feel good about yourself internally. Accept yourself for your shortcomings and flaws and all the wonderful parts of who you are as well. And then actually project that good feeling of who you are onto your husband and your life in different relationships. I call that the path of learning to be happy, moving from camp victim to camp take responsibility. I am the problem, and the life I have and the experience I have is because of me and my choices and decisions, not what's happened to me, which actually through that process of making that journey makes us feel important to ourselves, that I'm worth it to break out of this and eat some humble pie and take responsibility and change, and creates a deep sense of value in oneself where you can accept who you are and want to be you and want your life and feel that nothing is missing, which I define as the experience of being happy. It's a healthy relationship with yourself and feeling good about who you are by learning to live and can't take responsibility and doing the things to show yourself that you are important and that you matter, which then you can make changes on the unhealthy behaviors you have. Stop beating yourself up, feel good in yourself so that you stop emotionally beating your husband up or other people in your life. It can have a healthy, happy marriage. And now I want to talk a little bit to the men and the solution for men and always being made to feel wrong in your marriage, specifically around bringing issues and problems up with your wife and it exploding on you, that nothing gets solved and your wife just makes you feel wrong and that you're the problem and she doesn't need to look at anything in herself. Our response out of an issue being brought up is being defensive. So many of you have asked, why is my wife so defensive? If I bring anything up, she's so defensive. The solution to you feeling wrong and made to feel wrong by your wife is to know her defensiveness is your litmus test to know that you're correct, that what you're saying is correct, the problem that you want to solve is correct, how you see your wife contributing and creating that problem is correct, so that you are not sucked into the gaslighting and the crazy making that you are wrong. She can't make you feel wrong if you are grounded in yourself and knowing your own perception of reality and knowing it's right, not in a egotistical way or any negative way at all. Just knowing, I know myself, I know the experience of me, and I know this is what's happening. Her defensiveness is a tool for you to build that confidence in yourself, to know you're correct in your perception of reality. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to get her to see it. The majority of you can't, because you don't have wives and are not married to women who are open-minded in seeing these things in themselves. So it's your responsibility as a good man to be grounded and confident in yourself so your wife has no power over you to make you feel wrong. And her defensiveness can become a constructive tool for a good man to begin to rebuild his confidence and strength, to know his perception of what's happening is real and reasonable and correct, so that you are no longer sucked into the gaslighting, that you are wrong and that you are the problem. The challenge for good men is it is not in your wiring to have walls, to gaslight, to withhold from your wife, to withhold apologies. It's not within you to create crazy making in your relationship. It's not your nature. So you have to educate yourself to understand what these toxic behaviors look like, not making your wife bad or wrong. Again, everything I'm talking about, really important reminder, happens on a spectrum. Some men are really in it because they are married to women high on the spectrum of these issues and problems, and they are just on steroids. These issues and behaviors for some men in their marriage from their wives, it's on steroids how bad it is. A lot of good men, your wives are somewhere in the middle or on the lower end. These issues happen on a spectrum. wherever your wife falls on that spectrum, you have to educate yourself to understand these dynamics and behaviors so that you can constructively navigate them without being sucked into them and buying into your wife's perception of you that you are wrong. That's how you build a strength in yourself, unlike any strength you could build in any other context in your life. And it doesn't mean then that you convince your wife or try to convince your wife. It will only make things worse. I teach men, if you're going to bring an issue up, it's better to go into it testing the reality of your wife in a constructive way to see, is she open to changing? And the more defensive she gets, the more she makes you wrong, the longer she persists in those behaviors, not wanting to change, shows you the reality of the woman that you are married to, so that you can make a choice on the relationship to either stay or to navigate it the best you can, again, based on your values and what's most important to you and what your priorities are in your life, so that you're maintaining your own sanity, regardless of how your wife is showing up or not showing up. When she gets defensive and you start to understand, oh, this means I'm correct, or she wouldn't be having this reaction, it's not then about trying to convince her to see it. That will only make things worse. It's about understanding and seeing and knowing the reality of your wife, so you're no longer giving her the power that she's correct. She knows how things are supposed to go, and her perception of things is right. Which, again, through that process allows you to rebuild your strength and confidence. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you haven't, go check me out on YouTube, Rumble, and X. You can find the links in the description below to connect with me there. For those women listening who know you are the problem and want a path forward to take responsibility and change your own inner turmoil and unhappiness, I have a course for women called the Happiness Program, which is the solution to the unhealthy relationship you have with yourself and the issues and challenges you have in your life and your marriage. You can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. And for the good men listening who want a solution to take back the power you've unknowingly given away to your wife, I have a course for you too called the Marriage Rescue Course for Good Men Only that teaches you how to rebuild your strength and confidence as a good man so that you can navigate the relationship with your wife in a healthy, constructive way. Again, you can find the link in the description below to apply for a free consultation with me. Thank you again so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you soon.